Welcome to Beyond the Matrix with Rod Bryant and Jerry Gordon here on Israel News Talk Radio. Unplug, strap yourself in because you are about to move beyond the Matrix.
And this is an official day that you can remove yourself from the Matrix. I'm Rod Bryant along with Jerry Gordon. We welcome you guys here on Israel News Talk Radio. Also on the YouTube channel, Netiv Online, Netiv Online. You can check us out. Also leave us a message and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. Jerry, we have a guest that we've never had on, smart as a whip, very knowledgeable of archaeology, the history of Israel. And we are really excited to have Dr. Kenneth Hansen, or Dr. Ken Hansen, from his website, drkenhansen.com. Jerry, why don't you introduce our guest?
Okay, Dr. Ken Hansen is the coordinator of the interdisciplinary program in Judaic Studies at the University of Central Florida. He's taught the history, literature, and cultural legacy of the Jewish people from antiquity to the modern rise of the State of Israel. He's lived in Jerusalem in the northern Galilee. He earned a master's degree in international intercultural communications and went on to earn a doctorate, by the way, in Hebrew and literature from the University of Texas at Austin. He's got multiple books out there on this topic we're about to address. He's been on national television and syndicated radio, History Channel and Travel Channel, and the Gaia Network. He lends unique insights on the question of why Israeli Jewish heritage is proven by archaeology.
So what we're saying is that Israeli archaeology destroys the myths of the Arabs, and this fantastic book, we're going to talk about it too. Whose holy land is it? And it's a great book. You need to get your hands on it. You can find it at drkenhansen.com. You're listening to Beyond the Matrix here on Israel News Talk Radio. I'm Rod Bryant, along with Jerry Gordon. We'll be right back after these messages. As we said in the introduction, we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Kenneth L. Hansen. We gave him a brief introduction, but a very interesting book that you have written. I have a copy of it here. My wife asked me about, did I read the book, and was able to read the book in such a short amount of time. And it was a very, very comfortable read. And I would encourage people to get a different perspective on what's going on in our world. There seems to be some kind of full court press to overstate something that is pretty obvious to all of us, but we never talk about it. Why were you motivated to write this book called Whose Holy Land?
Well, actually, I lived in the state of Israel when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Illinois at Chicago quite a few years ago, finishing up my degree in history. And I enrolled in a little institute nestled among the trees on Mount Zion. What a place to live. And during my residence in Israel, I started studying the Hebrew language. They don't mess around in Israel. They make you fluent in a matter of months. Part of my studies, part of my education in those days was to accompany my fellow students out into the field. We weren't just sitting in libraries studying the books. We did that, but we went out regularly across the length and breadth of the land of Israel, including Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, rummaging through the archaeological sites from Jericho to Shechem, or Shechem, as it's often called. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I noticed that we had free access. It was easy to go anywhere we wanted to go in those days. We did notice the presence of Israeli troops, soldiers who were here and there perched on rooftops, just looking over things, because it was obviously a tense situation. And I wondered to myself, well, why are they there? Are they there because they want to oppress the people somehow? that there are colonialists who are trying to Judaize Arab territory? Or are they there simply because there are elements, and by no means all, but elements of the Palestinian population who want to murder Jews, who want to incite violence, who would like literally to see an end of the Jewish state? Now, as time passed, as the years have passed, those places I used to go as a student just aren't so available anymore, because this territory has since then passed to the Palestinian Authority under the peace process. And it dawned on me, gee, it's ironic that the peace process hasn't brought much peace, has it? We don't have access to those territories. Tourists, if you want to go to Shechem today, especially if you're Jewish or Israeli, you'd better watch out. Now we have a so-called separation wall between the West Bank territories, Judea and Samaria, and the rest of the state of Israel, which didn't used to exist. So what do people imagine that if and when a Palestinian state will ever arise in this area, that it's going to be nirvana and kumbaya, and men wearing lederhosen will come prancing across the hills, yodeling? Is that what it's going to be like? I doubt it. I doubt it. I'm not happy to see that separation wall. I'd like to see it come down. I'd like to see us have access to all the archaeological sites. And there's only one way that's going to happen, and that is if Israel will, Bezrat Hashem, in God's will, extend Israeli sovereignty over areas that are historically Jewish, that have been Jewish for the last 2,000, 3,000 years and more. And the proof of that is right under our feet. We're living on top of the Bible. These are ancient Jewish areas. And all you got to do is take a spade and dig down a little bit, and you'll find it. You'll find it.
Dr. Hansen, speaking about that, the subtext of your book is Archaeology Meets Geopolitics in Today's Middle East. What are the significant archaeological evidence of the over 3 million millennial Jewish presence there in Israel?
It's everywhere. Somebody said, you want to learn about America, take a book. You want to learn about the land of Israel, take a shovel. You dig down, and from Jericho to Shechem to Nablus, which is currently a Palestinian a city, but it's sitting on top of an area that was Jewish. Joseph's tomb, Rachel's tomb, Bethlehem, it's everywhere. So all you got to do is look. There are ongoing archaeological digs, of course. That's all controversial. But beyond that, there are Jews who actually desire to live in these places where you have historical Jewish presence for thousands and thousands of years. Settlements have gone up, controversial settlements which have been deemed illegal by the international community. What illegal is? It's illegal for Jews to live in their own land. You can, if you're Jewish, you cannot live in Hebron or Hebron. Now, did Jews come in and literally evict Arabs from their homes? They bought the places where they're living. Nonetheless, these areas are supposed to be devoid of Jews, and I hate to employ a Hitlerism. That's been done to death. But nonetheless, Hitler had a term that the Reich must be Judenrein. Judenrein, free of Jews. Actually, the word means clean of Jews. And it is not an exaggeration to say that this is the goal of the Palestinian Authority. If and when a Palestinian state should ever arise in this land, all Jews must leave. The Jewish settlers, the settlements must be dismantled. They must leave. Palestine must be Judenrein. And if they do not leave, what would be the fate of the settlers who have the audacity simply to want to live near the tomb of the patriarchs, where Abraham, at least in tradition, is buried, the patriarchs and the matriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob? What would be their fate? Not a pleasant one. It would not be possible.
If anything, they would do it in peril of their life.
In peril of their life. Exactly right. You're exactly right. In peril of their life. So that's what the Middle East is facing. Do we want a land which is indeed diverse and multicultural, which is what the state of Israel currently is? Or do we want apartheid? They talk about Israel being apartheid. That would be true apartheid, a separation of populations and Judenrein for the state of Palestine, quote unquote. This is Judea and Samaria. And even the term West Bank is a misnomer. West Bank of what? West Bank of the Jordan River. This is an artificial term. This is an artificial term that's basically invented in order to de-Judaize these areas. The correct term is, in fact, Yehuda, Judea, Veshomron, and Samaria. Yehuda Veshomron, Yesha, as it's abbreviated. And there's a council of Jewish Israeli settlers, in fact, who have gone to various areas in this historic land and simply said, we want to live here. We will happily live side by side with the Arabs. The Arabs won't have it.
I was going to throw in and ask a question because I want to get to really the meat of the book, and that is dealing with the evidence that is in the land, especially the latest evidence, archaeological evidence within the 3 millennial Jewish presence. What do you think is the most significant archaeological evidence found that points absolutely 100% that this is Jewish land?
Just a year ago, in fact, we have the opening of an archaeological tunnel near the city, or really underneath the ancient city of David, which has been disputed for many years. Was there even such a person as a King David? Now, this is what archaeologists debate. Did King David exist? Was he any more historical, say, than King Arthur? Well, this is where archaeology comes in, because for decades now, there has been an underground dig in the area called David City, although it's beneath the Arab neighborhood of Silwan, which is in Arab East Jerusalem. Now that means it's technically over the border of the Green Line, the 1948 Armistice Line, which artificially divided Jerusalem into eastern and western sectors. Now, if and when a Palestinian state is created, what's the demand? That Jerusalem be divided again along those very borders. And what is sitting directly underneath this part of Arab East Jerusalem, as they call it? Well, the city of David. And a new tunnel. It had been discovered by accident in the year 2004 when a sewage pipeline had burst in that part of town. Now, Jerusalem is united ever since 1967 under Israeli rule. And the Israelis have strict rules themselves as to how to approach anything that happens underground.
That is something I want to pick up when we come back from the break. It's really important for people to understand and hear this. Why I think this book is so very important for every individual is to get a proper perspective on what's going on. Many times they hear little tidbits of information, but you lay it out so well. And I want to make sure that people get a chance to buy this book. When we come back after the break, we'll talk about how to get that. You're listening to Beyond the Matrix here on Israel News Talk Radio. I'm Rod Bryant, along with my amazing producer and co-host, Jerry Gordon, and we'll be right back with Dr. Hansen after this message.
Okay.
Okay, stand by.
It's good flow, by the way.
Yes.
All right.
Dr. Hansen has done this 1,000 times.
I am most definitely sure of that.
Well,
Going on Coast to Coast AM on Monday night, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
pretty big
fantastic.
show.
Oh, it is. My goodness, I've been listening to that. Well, I don't listen
So,
now, but
what is happening Monday night?
A Coast to Coast AM with George Noory
Oh, really?
in the middle of the night.
I used to,
I just did his TV show also.
really.
Really?
Yeah, I shot it in Boulder, Colorado. Should be coming out soon.
Wow.
That's pretty interesting. So when you come back, you want to tell why did Israel cede control of the Temple Mount?
Welcome back to Beyond the Matrix, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
As we said in the intro, just doing a test, guys. Go ahead. Smooze amongst yourself.
Moves away.
Smooze away.
You want to deal with the twin events there that occurred on the liberation of Jerusalem, where Rabbi Goren says, blow up the mosques. And Muddy Gore says, we ain't about to do that.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
And then Moshe Dayan bends over backwards to essentially the little king, as we used to call him in Amman, granting him control of the Temple Mount.
Yep. Yeah.
I think those are important things to communicate.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, stand by. We're in the queue. This is going to air on the 22nd, correct? No, I'm 29th.
If it did, it's Back to the Future.
I have awakened many times thinking it was Back to the Future. Somebody, my wife showed me a nice meme that said, "What was I thinking when I said Happy New Year 2020?"
Really?
Okay, here we go. Thank God our trust is not in society. Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, and 1.
Welcome back to Beyond the Matrix, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
And we are back from the break. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'm Rod Bryant, along with Jerry Gordon, my producer and co-host. And we have Dr. Kenneth Hansen with us. He's written a fantastic book called Whose Holy Land? And you would think it'd be an obvious question, easy to answer, but there is so much chaos that is for an intentional purpose that comes from the PA, or as I call them, the pseudo-Stinians. And they want to constantly badger the Jewish people and the Israel state to say that this was land that was stolen from us and taken from us. And before the break, we were talking about significant. Hold on, stand by, guys.
You want to repeat that, sir?
Yes. Hold on. Poor Chaim has no idea what my schedule is. Actually, today's. Sorry about that. We start over again. In 3, 2, and 1.
Welcome back to Beyond the Matrix, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Before we went to the break, Dr. Hansen was talking about significant archaeological finds in Israel that have actually set the argument to a new high for the state of Israel and for the Jewish people. And you were talking about the city of David, which is this long underground archaeological dig. And they've made an amazing amount of progress, to include connecting back to the Second Temple era. And I'll go ahead and let you pick it up from there and go ahead.
And before the Second Temple era, all the way back, presumably to the days of the historical King David, a monumental structure literally has been uncovered underground, which certainly was some kind of an enormous administrative center in antiquity. And the question posed by Israeli archaeologists is who might have administered such a center? If there were not a King David, who then built this massive complex? It's all underground. There are really two Jerusalems. There's the one you see, but there's also underground Jerusalem. And that is what is so terribly controversial, because, of course, there are many on the Palestinian side who do not acknowledge that Jews ever lived in the land of Israel. I'm absolutely serious. And this is the extent of the propaganda that goes forth even to school children who grow up in the Palestinian authorities. The Jews came here as colonialists in the 19th and 20th centuries. There were no Jews in this land. And I have actual quotations in my book stating what they claim. So here we go underground and we find evidence all over the place, ancient seals with Paleo-Hebrew script on them. As I mentioned, the opening of a tunnel in 2019, which itself was hugely controversial because, oh, you're opening a tunnel underneath the peaceful Arab settlement or village of Silwan. And of course, more international condemnation. Never mind the fact that this has built not only infrastructure, but brought more tourism into the area, has increased wealth, prosperity across the length and breadth of Jerusalem and beyond. And you'd think that people who are living, I'm talking about the Palestinian community, who are living side by side with some of the most productive, ingenious, entrepreneurial people on earth, would want to share in that prosperity. Instead, no, we want to destroy it all. We want literally to crush the state of Israel. And they're doing a pretty good job because their propaganda, of course, leaks out into the international media and is picked up and reverberated hook, line, and proverbial sinker.
Absolutely. And this is why this program is so important for people to understand that there is another side to this, which is truth. And one thing for sure, we call the show Beyond the Matrix, because we really do believe that much of society is in a coma most of the time, and they don't examine the truth because it takes a little digging. And it also doesn't, what's the word? It's not pleasant to feel like that you're on the opposite side of what everybody else in the world thinks. And it makes it a little difficult. But before we go to Jerry, I want to ask, why don't you touch on a few of the myths that the Palestinian Arab Muslims have created over Judea and Samaria?
Well, there never was a temple. Jews never lived in Judea and Samaria. What about the ancient city of Jericho? No, Jews were never there. Never mind that we've got archaeological evidence going back to King Herod the Great. We have uncovered an entire palace built by Jewish hands under, of course, the tyrannical King Herod the Great. But who was living in this land? And before that, for centuries and centuries, all the way back to Joshua. And that is hugely controversial because can we prove that there ever was a Joshua or that the walls came crashing down? All of that is out there. It's debated among archaeologists, but there's no question that the Jewish heritage of the land has been present. How about Hebron, the tomb of the patriarchs? Is amazing. This is the oldest place of worship in continuous use from the time that it was constructed back in the Second Temple period and before until the present day. Centuries and centuries and centuries in continuous use. It is still there today in Hebron or Hebron. And this supposedly in tradition marks where Abraham, Isaac, Jacob were buried. Now, the Israelis conquered this territory in a essentially defensive war in 1967. The June 1967 Six-Day War, which started between Israel and Egypt. And the Israelis at the time sent a fervent message to King Hussein of Jordan in those days saying, stay out of this. This is between us and Egypt and Syria. What happened? Well, the Jordanians opened cannon fire all across the border of what in those days was just a truncated state of Israel because it had lost all this territory in their War of Independence of 1948. So the Jordanians attacked the Israelis. The Israelis took this territory in a defensive war. It's only about 40 to 50 miles in length from Israel proper to the Dead Sea and the Jordan River. Judea and Samaria was taken by the Israelis, and that meant the not only the Arab East Jerusalem, the most important site in all of Judaism, the Western Wall, but now the second most important site in all of Judaism, the tomb of the Patriarchs in Hebron. Now, when the Israelis took it, it wasn't long until they found an entrance into the underground recesses of that great Herodian tomb. And they actually lowered a little girl, her name was Michal, who was skinny enough to fit down the narrow opening into the underground recesses. They lowered her down. I have a photograph of them lowering her in my book. It's really amazing. She went down there and started exploring all of the cave. There really are caves underneath that tomb. The Bible calls it the cave of Machpelah, which Abraham purchased, by the way, from the Canaanites in those days. And so she actually did a little bit of exploration. And then there was a subsequent clandestine attempt to explore those same subterranean recesses decades later, where they actually found human bones down there. Whether they're the Abraham's bones is another question, but there certainly is a long Jewish heritage. All of that denied. I call it temple denial for one thing, and then you have the denial of all of Jewish presence in the region.
But this denial is not coming from a lack of information. It cannot be. It has to be a cognitive disconnect that says, I choose to believe this.
Exactly. You repeat something frequently enough, over and over and over again. And of course, that's what propaganda does. I choose to believe what I choose to believe.
Jerry, go ahead.
Well, in a way, it has its roots in the myth of Muhammad's infamous night flight to the furthest mosque, as it's known in the Quran.
Al-Aqsa.
Yes, that's Al-Aqsa. But going to the wonderful day that liberated Jerusalem during the 5th day of the battle, 6 days of war, what happens is Temple Mount is seized by the Israeli troops, and a rabbi who's with the troops says what?
Well, he was quite prepared to, let's say, demolish, blow up the Dome of the Rock. And Israeli authorities said, no way are you going to do that. The Israeli general on hand said, you say that one more time, I'm taking you to jail. Because this is the third holiest site in Islam after Mecca and Medina. Whatever the historicity or lack of historicity of the Prophet Muhammad's night ride, where he presumably got on his mystical steed Al-Buraq and in a single night was transported to the farthest location, which is Al-Aqsa, and set foot on the actual rock on which Ibrahim supposedly sacrificed Isaac. He was taken up to heaven on a ladder of light and met Allah himself, who washed his heart, and then he went back down again and back to Mecca in a single night. And so the Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on the Temple Mount. So was the Golden Dome of the Rock, third holiest site in Islam. But where was the ancient Jewish temple, which the Palestinians denied? Where was it located? Well, some have thought could have been anywhere up on the Temple Mount. It might have been further north of where the Dome of the Rock is. There's good archaeology now that suggests that the Dome of the Rock is sitting exactly on the site of both King Herod's temple and Solomon's temple. And Rabbi Goren is saying, this is our holiest site. This is the rock. This is where our temple should stand. Why don't we just get rid of the Dome of the Rock? Well, Israelis, never mind the zealotry, do desire to live in peace and in coacceptance with Muslims, with Arabs. Obviously, they have done this for years. There's a long history of Jews living in peace and tranquility and actually rising to high position under Arab Islamic rule across the Middle East. Look at Maimonides, for example. There's no desire to destroy Islam or a sacred site of Islam. And this is why the Israelis bent over backwards to respect Islamic sites, to respect Christian sites, to respect all holy sites in the city of Jerusalem and, of course, across the entire land. But what they did was, under General Moshe Dayan, to create an Arab trust on top of the Temple Mount called the Waqf, which gives the Arab Muslims virtual complete control of the Temple Mount.
Dr. Hansen, we're going to have to go to a break. I really appreciate what you're saying so far. We have the third segment coming up. We have so many questions to ask and not enough time to do it. But we'll be right back after these very important messages. You're listening to Beyond the Matrix here on Israel News Talk Radio. Okay, stand by.
Okay. Are we free to talk, Rod?
Yes, sir. Go for it.
In this final segment, you want to deal with those strange Israeli groups who have been complicit in denying places like Shem and horrible revelations about the state of Israel not defending the tomb of Joseph.
Okay.
All right, but I'd like to sort of end up with that question about Qumran.
Mm-hmm.
And also, since this program is going to air virtually on the day of Erev Tish B'Av, the question about where did...
Here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Before we went to...
Where did Jeremiah go to, and where is the Ark of the Covenant? I think that's probably a good way to sort of end the nature of this fact discussion. Right. Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
I can hear my wife downstairs telling my grandson that Papa is an old. Like she said that 4 times, man. So I don't know what she's trying to get at. Maybe
You're kidding me. Why would Melanie consider doing that? You
I guess she likes.
You guys were married like pups.
I know, she likes to do that with the grandkids because then they get all protective. Like, no, he's not. He's not old. So, okay, we're rendering this. Okay, since we only have, 10 minutes and 30 seconds, what do we want to hit as the key here? I want to promote the book, obviously, where you can get it on Amazon. Where can you purchase the book, Doctor?
Yeah, it is.
On Amazon.
Okay. So
and my website, of course, which links to Amazon.
Okay, so right out the chute, let's do that, and then at the end we'll do it again. Anything specific that you want to hit on that you think is important that we haven't touched on?
Well, it's Rabbi Getz and his tunneling in the 1980s, where he says he laid eyes on the Ark of the Covenant.
Okay, so
Right.
let's just go to the hot topic and do that. Okay, yeah.
We can talk about Joseph's tomb also. And that's why I read Pogrom.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yeah, we need to talk about that. That was a veritable pogrom.
Yeah.
It was.
Okay, Rod. We're ready.
And 3, 2, and 1.
Welcome back to Beyond the Matrix, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
And we're back into the final segment. I'm Rod Bryant, along with Jerry Gordon and Dr. Kenneth Hansen. We've been talking about his really fantastic book that you guys have got to get your hands on. You can get it on Amazon, actually, and you can go to his website. But the book is called Whose Holy Land? That's the question. Dr. Hansen, what is the website?
The website is drkenhansen.com. Dr. Ken Hansen, HANSON.com. And I have links there not only to Amazon, but to my own YouTube channel, where I have created 6 Judaic studies courses. I teach Judaic studies, and
Oh, wow,
I
fantastic.
created a whole series of video lessons, unlike anything you've ever seen before. I guarantee, and it's all on my own YouTube channel called Treasures in Time. But just go to my website, drkenhansen.com. It'll take you everywhere you want to go.
Absolutely. What I like about it is you're providing an education to and translating it out in a way that most people haven't taken time to consider. You've got a very well laid out system. I want to encourage people, go to the website, drkennethhansen.com.
Dr. Ken Hansen.
Dr. Ken Hansen. I'm sorry, and no spaces, no dots in between.
Right.
Dr. Hansen, let's go to this sort of really hot topic issue, Joseph's tomb, and also the digging under the Temple Mount.
Yeah, well, Joseph's tomb is the third holiest site in Judaism after the Temple Mount and the tomb of the patriarchs. This is where the venerable ancient patriarch Joseph, with his multicolored coat, was in tradition buried. Now, what does the archaeology say? How far back can we trace it? Depends who you listen to. There are a lot of competent archaeologists on both sides, and we don't know if this was actually Joseph's tomb or not. Very possibly not, but we know that there was a Jewish tomb structure built here many, many centuries ago, back into antiquity, as a matter of fact, and it is well attested in sources. So Jews find this a very important place to come to pray. They built a yeshiva, in fact, right on the doorstep of the tomb, called the Od Yosef Chai Yeshiva, which means Joseph still lives. Well, what happened? All of this territory was transferred to the Palestinian Authority under the Oslo Accords, which in fact turned out to be a disaster, the Oslo Accords. And it opened the door for all manner of unrest in the region. In September of 1996, Joseph's tomb was stormed by a group of rioters and gunmen. This was essentially a modern pogrom, like the pogroms that plagued the European communities for so many centuries. I actually have a statement here from one of the yeshiva students at the time. His name was Hillel Lieberman, and here's what he said. After a large demonstration in the central square of Nablus, Arabs began to march on Joseph's tomb. Within minutes, the tomb was surrounded on all sides by thousands of Arabs who began to pelt the compound with rocks and firebombs. The same Arab policemen who regularly served on the joint patrol with the Israelis now began firing at the Israeli soldiers with their Kalashnikov machine guns.
Wow.
And it got worse. Upon entering the yeshiva, they engaged in a pogrom reminiscent of scenes from Kristallnacht, when synagogues in Germany were ransacked. Sacred texts were burned by Palestinians or torn to shreds. Talises or talitot, Jewish prayer shawls, sacred tefillin or phylacteries were thrown to the ground. Anything of value pillaged. The yeshiva's office equipment, refrigerators, etc., all stolen. The library was set afire. Unbelievable. Now, the Israeli army essentially helped to evacuate the area. But why was the Israeli response so tepid? Probably, again, because they didn't want to incite the situation further, and they knew that international condemnation would come down, as it always had. But the Israelis basically abandoned the third holiest site in Judaism. What a tragedy. Now, eventually, Jews have been allowed to return for prayer only. And they also attempted to create a settlement in the region, in fact. But the Israelis themselves ordered the settlement demolished.
Right. And it's just interesting thought that every agreement or peace agreement that we've attempted to make with the PA has always turned into just a disaster. Always. It's just, there's never been a peace deal that ever had any peace in the whole thing. And I just find it really interesting. Once again, going back to the book, make sure you get a copy of this book. You don't want to miss it. Go to Amazon or go to drkenhansen.com. You'll be able to order the book. Jerry, you had a question you wanted to ask or throw in a comment?
It's Dr. Getz, Rabbi Getz, and his project underneath the Temple Mount.
Absolutely. Well, when Israel conquered the areas of Judea, Samaria, and East Jerusalem in the 1967 Six-Day War, what a scene it was, where Israeli paratroopers, the roughest and toughest, are literally throwing themselves against the Western Wall and weeping. Unbelievable. Rabbi Yehuda Getz, Rabbi Emeritus of the Western Wall, back in the 1980s, started digging to the north, underneath the Arab East Jerusalem, the Muslim quarter, actually, of the old city of Jerusalem, started extending a tunnel that was already there, but extending it all the way northward along the ancient Herodian wall. Unbelievable. He got to one area called Warren's Gate, well below ground, and penetrated it, and found himself within a series of subterranean vaulted caverns, originally built in the days of King Herod. This is the substructure of the Temple Mount and the great Jewish temple that stood on the site that Arabs deny existed. And Rabbi Getz was overwhelmed. He threw himself on the ground. He said he was just incapacitated for the longest time. And he actually claimed that he had laid eyes on the Ark of the Covenant that was still nestled down there. But he couldn't do anything about it because Arabs had heard the digging up above and sent down through the sewer grates on top of the Temple Mount a group of stalwart young men who engaged in fisticuffs, actually. And it was a virtual underground riot going on. And the Israelis, again, did not want to incite anything. They ordered the rabbi to get out of that area, to seal the gate with reinforced concrete. And that's the end of that. We'll never know what exactly.
So we don't know. We don't know if he thought he saw it or he did see it.
Right. We'll never know. We can't even conduct archaeology. We cannot even excavate down there because of the temple denial.
Right. I mean, that it's still concreted over to this day. Right.
And in 1996, when that tunnel was finally open to the public under Netanyahu, he was prime minister in those days as well. They found a place on the Via Dolorosa to open the northern end of that tunnel. And it was massive rioting all across Jerusalem and the West Bank over an archaeological tunnel.
Think about this.
Bibi sent in tanks, helicopter gunships. They were throwing stones onto worshipers at the wall. A lot of people were killed in this rioting. That's what's at stake in the Middle East today.
It's interesting. I don't know if you're secular or religious or whatever, but there has always appeared, and especially for Jews and even Christians, it's easy to understand that there is also other forces that are at work in this process. There are forces that do not want the information, the revelation and understanding of finding this archaeological evidence and the temple and the furniture. There is a force, it seems like, that does not want that to be in the open, at least right now.
Yeah, actually, as a Jew by choice.
Right. Okay. So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay.
There are forces even beyond this materialistic universe that we see, and we're engaged in something.
Okay. So we're talking the same language here. It's very important. The reason why that you and I have to continue to sort of beat this drum, and it seems like this is all that and Jerry and I talk about over the years, is to bring people the information to be able to make a good, wise choice about the land of Israel, the Jewish people, the Torah, you name it. We're trying to do that. And this book is so very important, folks. If you haven't had a chance to buy the book, you really need to. And if you're online, you're watching on YouTube, I've got a copy of the book right here. Fantastic. You just got to get it. I haven't been this excited about that kind of a presentation because of the way you laid it out. Jerry, go ahead.
What's your view about the Trump peace plan in terms of ceding Jewish land to form a Palestinian state?
We have about 1 minute. Go ahead.
1 minute. Okay, it's a start, and I think it's a good start. yes, it does allow for a Palestinian state, which would be a terror state. And I address that in my book as well. But by the same token, we have to balance that with the fact that Trump, whatever you think of him, has been the most pro-Israel president that the state of Israel has ever seen. And the very idea that the Trump administration is supporting the extension of Israeli sovereignty over a good part of Judea and Samaria, those Israeli settlements, that this area needs to be under Jewish sovereignty, and that has been supported, and that is a huge development. Be'ezrat Hashem.
It is a huge development. And also, Jerry and I have uncovered the fact that there are a lot of people that live there. The Arabs that live in that area don't want to be under PA control. They want to be under Israeli control.
Exactly. If given the choice.
Yeah, they're given the choice. Why not prosperity? That's what is going to happen.
So Israel could enfranchise, in fact, the Arab citizens living in Judea and Samaria.
God willing.
It would dilute the Jewish majority in the land of Israel, but it would not eliminate it. There would be no apartheid. Jews would still have a clear majority. It would be a Jewish state.
Amen. That's going to come. Okay, that's going to come. Look, guys, go to Dr. Ken Hansen, one word, drkenhansen.com. You can order the book on Amazon or from the website. Plus, there is a whole plethora of educational videos on his YouTube channel, which you can find from the website. Correct, Doc?
That's right.
Okay,
absolutely. But I have a whole YouTube channel that'll take you there.
Okay, let's not waste too much time before we do this again. God bless, guys. We'll see you this time next week. Shalom.
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 Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Let's do this again.
All right.
Especially if you get a hot topic, something that comes up, you've dealt with or looking at. Let's just let us know.
Absolutely.
Well, there was one. You
don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Okay.
Yeah, you had referred to this significant recent discovery, basically disclosed this past month, of another example of this huge administrative structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually I have not heard. I knew that there was some pretty massive stuff. Like I found out, was it yesterday or day before, that they found the largest seal yet.
Yes.
Of I think, was it of Judah?
Yes, they found a series of seals.
Yeah, the seals are. We have a whole number of them now.
Right.
That relate to actual Israelite kings, Hezekiah, for example.
Right.
So yeah, all this is great stuff.
So I'm not.
By the way, we have, in the case of my own relatives who are in Me'olah Adumim and our good friends, Dan Diker and Miskalik, among others, who are in the Gush Etzion.
Yeah.
So we're pretty cognizant of what you're talking about.
Yeah, this is. Yeah.
Yes.
I've really appreciated the time you having you here, and sure, we'd love to put you on the short list of people that we give a call when something's coming up like this. Like I said, very well laid out. I like it.
Cool.
Well, I'm sure my colleague on the New English Review Press, Rebecca, will be pleased by what we've just.
Yeah, and how long before it's on the YouTube channel?
The YouTube channel is instantaneous with the posting that we do the podcast next Wednesday. It's usually
at 9 in the morning.
Yeah.
It'll pop up.
Can you send me a link or something?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do that immediately.
And then if it's okay, I will post it on my own YouTube channel.
I appreciate that.
We have no problems with that.
Yeah, not a problem at all. As a matter of fact, I can send you. Do you have a way
do you want to advance him the link?
Yeah, I could actually. Do you want to download the video and then put it on your YouTube? Because if I'm not,
that's ideal. I can do that easily.
Oh, okay. If you know how to do it, then that's
on your YouTube channel. I'll download it. And
then that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. That's absolutely fine. I was thinking of a way to send you the raw video, but it might, need to.
Yeah, it's easier just to do it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. Great. Okay. We really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. A beautiful Shabbos. Okay. May your Shabbos be illuminated with great light. And
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, my friend. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Have an easy fast, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes, you too.
Yeah,
You too. Easy fast.
Okay, take care.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks, starts and hits.
Okay, let's see. Okay, guys, on YouTube, we're going to say goodbye. Is that what we're going to say?
I think so.
I don't know what the heck I'm doing right now. Okay, so here we go. We're going to do the introduction. Let me see. Do we have?
Yeah, I think it's important to I got his bio in front of me, and quite frankly, it's worth the retelling in that regard. Particularly since he's appeared on things like the History and Travel Channel and the Gaia Network.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, this guy is a whip, man. He's smart as a whip.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Wow, that guy is just
basically, when my colleague at the NER Press sent me the book and the stuff, I said, spot on. We have to have this guy on.
yeah, a Jew. Listen, I wonder what happened to him during that time to become a Jew by choice. Like, you cannot look at the archaeological evidence and live in the land without wanting to join the people.
I think he referred to that.
Yeah.
Pretty much. He said in the time he was there, they would take them out on field trips to each of these sites.
Man. Okay.
Okay.
Let's do this thing.